Welcome to episode 48 of the Your Way podcast. So Nat and I were sat on the balcony this morning drinking our coffee at about 7:15 a.m. And Nat said, "Isn't it incredible? Think how many years we spent getting up, pushing our alarms to like the last possible second, throwing ourselves out of bed, quick shower, quick bit of something to eat, straight to work for like this crazy day, time spent on the tube, all of the rest of it." He said, and now we've got all of this free time, we've got all of this space. He's like, we're just sitting here on the balcony in the sunshine, and isn't it incredible? And it got me thinking about what were the shifts that took me from getting up, waking up at 4:30 a.m. in a panic, starting to do emails, throwing myself out the door before 6 a.m. so I could go to the gym before work, spending my entire day trying to do emails, trying to do work, back-to-back meetings, more emails on the tube on the way home, emails until I went to bed, crappy night's sleep, to repeat the next day, to try and recover on weekends, to repeat the next week for over a decade. Okay. And so what I thought I would do today is lift the lid on some of the pertinent shifts and changes that happened for me to allow me to have created this as my current reality. It is currently 9:53 a.m. I've had a one-on-one client this morning already. Nothing else on my calendar after this until 4 p.m. I'm going to take the dog for a lovely walk. It's hot here today, so we're going to go and head to the woods. We're going to go and find some water that she can have a little swim in. I might do bits of other work. I might have a nap. I have all of this luxurious time and space, and what I haven't done is sacrificed my income in order to get here. And I think often that is people's big concern. Like, if I'm going to have the life that I want, if I'm going to have the flexibility that I want, if I'm going to have the schedule that I desire, it's going to come at a cost to me. And I'm here to share today that that doesn't necessarily need to be your truth. Okay, because you get to choose the timeline that you operate from, you get to choose the paradigm that you live from, and that happens when you choose to shift the timeline and shift the paradigm. So I'm going to share some of my story today. I, as always, invite you to listen to this through the lens of how might you shift your paradigm and your timeline so that you get to have your version of this, right? Not my version of it, because my version might not feel good for you, but what would your version of good look like? And what are the shifts that you might be able to make in order to get there? So I think the first thing was 2018. I'm signed off work with stress. But before that, I took a month off. So I had a month, took 4 weeks of annual leave all in one go. And we spent some of that time driving around the UK. And the last 3 nights of that, we called it the UK tour. The last 3 nights of the UK tour, we spent just outside a town called Hereford in this lovely little hamlet. And when I woke up in the morning, it was quiet. There was no traffic noise. There were fields, there were sheep and cows in the fields. And I noticed a very distinct difference in how my body felt and how I was experiencing myself in that environment. And so Nat and I agreed then that we were going to work towards creating a life where that's how we got to feel when we woke up in the morning, right? Where it wasn't this constant stress and push and everything was a rush all of the time. And so we kind of set that intention in September of 2018 that we were going to shift our lives so that it looked different. So towards the end of those 4 weeks, I realized I'm not okay. I get signed off work with stress. And I had an inkling at that point that I didn't want to go back. I knew I didn't want to go to, I knew I didn't want to carry on being a lawyer, but I wasn't really sure what I was going to do next. And I had coaching in the back of my mind already. I'd been to a coaching open day to find out what it was all about. And So I dove in and started my coaching diploma, like the good perfectionist that I was, overriding my needs. So signed off work with stress, started a coaching diploma. I was very, very A-type back then. Um, but I started my business whilst really in the thick of burnout. And so I guess one of my non-negotiables, but not necessarily from a healthy place, just from I'm literally not able to do it any other way because I'm absolutely flipping exhausted, was this desire, intention, but I suppose commitment is the right word, to build a business in a different way than how I'd operated as a lawyer. Because there's lots of chat out there about if you're going to build a business, it's 18-hour days for at least the first year. You need to really push and hustle until you make your first 100,000. And there's all of these narratives and all of these rules. Now, not necessarily from an embodied place or a really aware place, but just because of the actual constraints that I was experiencing, couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. Couldn't do the work with 20 clients a week, um, do all of these different pieces because I didn't have the energy for it. I didn't have the capacity for it. And so I had to be a little bit creative about how I went about things. And it really, really stood me in good stead because it's very, very true that how you get to a place is how you will be at the place. This is why when I talk about collapsing timelines and quantum jumping, the key really is to get yourself in that frame of mind of when I'm at this place, like if I was the person who had everything that I wanted and had the relationship with time that I wanted and had the experience, like the health, the body, and everything that I wanted, what would I be thinking? What would I be doing? How would I be showing up? How would I be feeling? We do that now to become that version then. And so the same thing had to happen when I built my business. There was no point me trying to push and hustle my way to achieve because I'm still reinforcing the fact that I have to push and hustle my way in order to achieve. And so I had to do things very differently. And what I learned very quickly was it was very, very possible for me to get an awful lot done, to build my business, to work with clients, to work on myself in far, far less than 18 hours a day. I mean, being really, really honest, I was probably lucky if I even did 18 hours a week at that point. You know, I would do a coaching session, I would be exhausted, I would lie on the floor and do a yoga nidra to recover, to do another coaching session, right? To then go and lie in the garden on a blanket. We had these like fake leather bean bags that we used to sit in the garden. And I remember, so I'm recording this at the end of April 2025. So I remember April 2019 signing up for this coaching program, and you could listen to lots of the modules. And I just used to spend hours in the day just lying in the garden, wrapped in a blanket. We obviously weren't having a heat wave then like we are now, wrapped in a blanket, just listening to these modules. And that really just been enough. So the first shift was really anchoring into how we wanted life to feel and how I wanted life to feel. This recognition, but really based on what was available to me at the time of I didn't want to continue working in that way. And so I had to look for creative ways to build and grow a business whilst also trying to heal from burnout, right? Because that's no joke. So that was a big shift. But what I noticed was, even though I was doing a lot less, there was still this intense internal pressure that I always had to be going. I always had to be doing. So you'll notice I wasn't just lying in the garden, wrapped in a blanket, enjoying myself. I was lying in the garden, wrapped in a blanket, listening to coaching trainings, right? So there was always this need to be productive, be doing, be on the go. And so even though it looked very different to how it looked in law, I was still pretty much unable to slow down, stop, rest, take proper care of myself. And the first coach that I ever worked with, I remember her asking me about what my rules were. I can't think what we were talking about something, and she was like, "This sounds like one of your rules." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, probably." She's like, "I'm curious, what other rules do you have?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't think I really have any rules." Oh my goodness, so many rules, right? So many rules about who I needed to be and how I needed to eat and how I needed to exercise and what I was supposed to look like and how I was supposed to show up and how I was supposed to give and how I was supposed to organize myself. And so like this next phase of growth and awareness and shifting my relationship with myself and my time came when I actually slowed down and paid attention and really connected into what what were the rules that I was living my life by? Where did those rules come from? Were they my rules? Were they rules I wanted to follow? Um, how were they keeping me safe? Were they needed right now to keep me safe? And how did I want to shift those? And that was a big change. And it was a real eye-opener to realize just how rule-driven and controlled and constrained my life was. And I remember her saying to me, she was like, "Well, you've got all of these like things in place to keep things controlled and organized." She's like, "But really, control is an illusion." And I was really quite triggered by this. I'm not sure I even told her I was quite triggered by it, but I remember thinking in my mind, I was like, no, no, no. Control is not an illusion. Control is an absolute fundamental, essential need of mine. And it's how I feel safe in the world. And what do you mean? Can't what? Right? So there was lots of unpeeling there. And then lots of work required to really decouple my identity and how I saw myself and my worth from my output, my achievement, my success. Because if there is this paradigm of I need to be productive all of the time, I need to be pushing in order to succeed, even if I was, even though I was, not if I was, kidding myself of, oh, I've slowed down now and I'm doing less and I'm taking better care of myself. I was, but also I wasn't because there's still this internal narrative of I need to prove myself, I need to earn the right to exist, I need to be pushing, and I need to be showing up and helping and supporting people so that I don't get ignored or left. And so this was then the next layer that came up. So forward now a couple of years, I'm working with an amazing nervous system trauma somatic coach to help me really dive into some of these patterns at a body-based level. And some of the work that we did there, and this is also work that I now do with clients, was looking at inner child work via the mechanism of internal family systems therapy. So internal family systems therapy is parts work. It looks at the different parts of us that we developed from kind of birth to now in order to protect ourselves and keep us safe. It's like our version of inner child work, inner child healing. I think they're all, like lots of different paths all leading to the same place of how do we integrate those younger parts of ourselves and accept all of us. And so when I'm doing some of this work with my trauma coach, this same pattern's coming up, right? I'm not resting. This is long before the daily nap, right? Long before the daily naps came in. I'm not resting. I'm constantly pushing. I'm putting all of this pressure on myself. So even though I'm exhausted because I'm still recovering from burnout, because fuck me, it takes a long time. Um, there's still this pressure of I need to be doing more. I need to be achieving more. I need to be creating more. So what on paper looked very healthy, very wonderful. And I wasn't working long hours and I wasn't doing all of the things. But internally, I was still doing all of the things in my mind. Like there was no mental break from what I was doing. So I had this realization. And I think I took it to coaching. Like I've just noticed that I find it very hard to slow down and stop and just be with myself. And the coach said, she was like, well, what happens when you stop? And I was like, I don't know, because I've never done it. No idea. I've never done it. And so we dove into it, and we dove into it not just from a cognitive perspective, but also very much from a body somatic perspective. And what came up for me was this visual. So when I do somatic body trauma work for myself, I'm very, very visual. I'm not very visual in my day to day, but when I really connect into my body, I get a lot of imagery. And the visual was me sat on my bed, aged about 12, with my knees up. So those of you on YouTube will be able to see me do this now. In that sort of position, sort of like knees up, curled in. Just really, really sad in my bedroom on my own. And what I realized was there was this 12-year-old-ish younger part of me that was terrified that if I stopped giving, showing up, being present, abandoning myself, people pleasing, that I was going to be essentially sad, alone, ignored, overlooked in my room, feeling alone. Like feeling lonely, feeling alone is one of my biggest things that I've had to work through. Um, and so when I could then be with that younger part of myself and reparent that younger part of myself so that she understood, so that part of me understood that it was safe to rest. It was safe to not be visible and not be giving all of the time. And actually, it was no longer necessary for me to be doing those things in order to be lovable and worthy and appreciated, because actually my worth and my lovability just is, right? It's innate. I now do believe that I'm very easy to love, but it's been a journey. It's been a journey. So that need to prove had gone, as a child, I played the role of the parent a lot, um, which wasn't the right place, but that's what I learned. And I learned that in order to be valuable and needed, that's how I needed to operate. And so yeah, working with that younger part of myself to really get clear on some of those fears that I was still carrying around allowed me to then create this shift where I recognized that I no longer needed to be constantly on the go, giving and pushing in order to be valuable. And the other thing alongside this with the nervous system work is that I recognized that my system was pretty much permanently in a high sympathetic fight or flight space. And for me, the predominant way that showed up was the flight. Okay. So it was actually incredibly hard for me to be still, to sit still, to not do anything. Like I would feel so, so agitated. And so, I remember when we lived in London, I used to go for multiple walks multiple times a day, even like for dinner. But I'm just going to go for a quick walk because there'd be so much stuff in me. And it was only when I learned to slow down and connect into that and feel the stuff, right? Feel the stuff that all of the walking and the pushing and the proving and the never stopping, feel all of the stuff that had been masking, that I then got to get to this place of, I actually don't need this anymore. I still go for a walk out in nature every day, but I go out once. It's very, very rare that I go out a second time. Sydney's down there asleep in her crate. She's like, Mummy, are we going to go out soon though? But she used to have like easily 3 walks a day when we first got her. And we didn't get her until the November of 2021. Yeah, so this was still very, very much going on then. So that was then the next shift. And then at the start of 2022, I think, I then started training in the nervous system and the trauma and the somatic work because I realized it was not only an alive issue for me, but it was also an alive issue for all of my clients. And if I wanted to support them effectively, I actually wanted to really deeply understand this stuff. And I also realized at that time that one of the ways that I was overriding and pushing through and being on this constant go, go, go was quite an impressive relationship with caffeine. I'm talking like easy 6 shots of coffee. I used to drink Monster energy drinks, Diet Coke, like all throughout the day. And when I took that out, so I then went to like sort of one coffee a day rather than multiple, multiple, multiple. That was when I was really faced with the stuff that I hadn't been looking at. That's when I connected into deep chronic freeze in my system, the tired, like the deep, deep exhaustion in my system. And these things came together. And that is when the almost daily nap started. And I really had a lot of resistance to it at the start. I was like, I shouldn't be having to need all these naps. I shouldn't need all of this stuff. But at the same time, I'd got myself into a place where I could allow myself to rest and allow myself to nap. And then this has really evolved. And so, without making this like the world's longest podcast, there's been many, many things that I have worked through, looking at my rules, understanding where my nervous system's at, working with my nervous system so it feels safe to rest, getting myself into a place where I can access the more creative, intuitive parts of myself because my nervous system is regulated. I'm in that space of calm aliveness. And so now I probably do, I would say on average 3 hours a day, Monday to Thursday. So I don't work Fridays, I don't work Saturdays, I don't work Sundays. So Monday to Thursday, probably 3 hours a day on my computer doing calls. That might be slightly more if if I've got therapy or I'm joining a mastermind that I'm in. And then probably another hour on social media or writing posts or writing emails. The podcast is every other week. So I would say I probably work 20 to 25 hours a week. Okay. I have a beautiful selection of clients via one-on-one, the Time Alchemy membership, and the Your Way and Wealthy Witches masterminds. And I have copious amounts of time for myself. So I won't be doing it today because I've already washed my hair. But this afternoon is the Wealthy Witches call. And for the last 3 weeks, I've had a really lovely long soak in an Epsom salt bath before that call. Sydney and I, we will go out soon, go for our long walks every day. They're not as long, right? I'm not out for hours and hours and hours, but we go out for at least a couple of hours a day during the day. It is going to be hot today. So when I get back, I'll probably be a bit warm. I'll probably have a nap. Now, I'm not saying you need to have this kind of schedule, but my point is, it is possible to have a successful business. Like most people are like, you show up all the time, you're on social media every day, you're always on video, you're always recording, you're always doing things. Yeah, but also it's all very natural. It's not staged, it's not forced. I think I've been recording this now for about 25 minutes. I didn't do any prep other than sitting on the balcony with Nat this morning and being like, oh, I should do a podcast to talk about this. Right? Social media posts, I never sit down to like, oh, I need to write a social media post. When something comes to me, I write it down. If lots of things come into me in one day, I write them down and then I drip feed them out, right? But my point is, your relationship with time can shift. It can shift quite quickly. But the stuff that really moves the needle is looking at why you currently spend your time the way you do, feeling safe to spend your time the way you want. And that's the point in time where you can start to really play around with, well, what do you need? What do you want? Now, although I didn't do it quote unquote perfectly because I was still in my learning, healing, growth, what I never did was the crazy hour days and meet all of the needs and the shoulds that people put out there for how we are, quote unquote, meant to build businesses, live our lives. And so if you take nothing else away from this, maybe start to play around with what might your schedule look like for you if you were going to really, really go about this in a way that works for you and your natural rhythms and where you're at and your energy levels at a specific point in time. I actually don't think anyone should be working 18 hours a day for any reason at any time. That's just my personal view. I'm not saying that's right, right? Not right. It's not an absolute truth. It's just my personal opinion. But if you are someone who has had a tendency to override and overgive, and maybe you've experienced burnout and stuff in the past, you can't do it that way in the future. And also, you just don't want to. Like, you're like, yeah, wasn't worth it. So if you are feeling drawn to having more focused attention on how you spend your time and the stuff that really is going to move the needle so that you can give yourself what you need and get what you want and take care of yourself, manage your energy and honor yourself and your natural rhythms, I would love to invite you to join my Time Alchemy membership. So the price has now gone back up to its normal price of 222 a month. You will find link in the show notes. If you have got to hear, then I'm going to give you a podcast exclusive, which is to use the code 111 at checkout, and that will allow you to lock in your monthly membership price at 50% off, so £111 a month for as long as you decide to stay. So it's a completely flexible membership. You pay monthly, you can leave anytime. But I have created that space now and really curated that space to walk you through the step-by-step process that you need to go on so that you can create exactly what you want in the actual time you have whilst keeping yourself healthy and burnout free, managing your energy levels. And because we are all different and all unique, it's also set out in a way that it will meet you where you are. So if you're very logical left brain, you want a plan, there's materials there for you. If you're a little bit more, I would like to work in line with the seasons and the moon and my natural rhythms. And maybe I would like to explore how my dream works. And I am interested in quantum physics and collapsing time and quantum jumping. It's all there for you. And it's all there for you as you evolve and get more curious and want to dive into other things. But what it isn't is like you have to follow this exact step-by-step plan because it's not how life works. We're all individual, we're all unique. So it's there to allow you to do it in a way that works for you. And then alongside that, you have the community support. So there is a community space that you can go in to get support 24/7. And we also have live calls every single month where we deep dive into a topic. You can request a topic that we deep dive into. We have Q&A time. And also there is time for breathwork activations, meditations. So we can also really tap into the subconscious and what is going on there. Because 5% of what is going on in your brain is in your conscious reality. And what we do in this space is also tap into that other 95% because there is a whole load of magic there. So if this is calling to you, please feel free to reach out to me on social media if you've got questions. The link is in the show notes and I would love to see you in that program. So I wish you well. It's time to take the doggo out and I will see you next time. Take care.